The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of the Galactic Council meeting, every major news network was broadcasting the same story. The Swarm Coalition was going to invade Earth. The primitive human world was about to face the largest military force in recent galactic history. On the crystal world of Vextar, the news anchors could barely contain their amusement. 10,000 ships against a species that still uses chemical rockets, laughed the lead reporter, his crystalline face glowing with entertainment. The betting pools are already open. Most experts give the humans 2 days at most. The Aquatic Federation's underwater cities buzzed with similar conversations. Their diplomats had tried to warn the humans about expanding too quickly, but the stubborn species had ignored all advice. Now they would learn the hard way why the galaxy had rules. Admiral Lee Dong-hyun stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath Seoul. The massive room looked like any other military facility, with screens showing ship positions and communication arrays, but Lee knew the truth about what lay hidden beneath Earth's surface. He had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. "Sir, we're getting reports from all sectors," said Lieutenant Colonel Minho Seo, reading from his tablet. "The Crystalline Confederation is offering refugee ships. They expect us to evacuate at least half the population before the invasion." Lee almost smiled. The galaxy saw humans as a young species that had gotten lucky with a few technological advances. They had no idea what Earth had really been doing for the past 50 years. "What's the status on the agricultural zones?" Lee asked. "Dr. Choi reports all farming equipment is ready for conversion. The tractors and harvesters are moving into position as we speak." Across the planet, something remarkable was happening that no galactic observer would understand. In the vast wheat fields of Kansas, massive farming machines were rolling across the landscape. To any satellite watching from space, it looked like normal harvesting season. The machines moved in neat rows, collecting grain and processing crops. But Dr. Young-ho Choi knew better. He stood in the control room of what appeared to be a simple grain processing facility. The walls were lined with computers that supposedly tracked crop yields and weather patterns. In reality, they were coordinating the largest manufacturing operation in human history. "How long until full conversion?" Choi asked his assistant. 18 hours, sir. The combine harvesters will finish their current routes, then begin the transformation sequence. By tomorrow morning, we'll have 40,000 mobile production units ready." Choi nodded. The galaxy thought humans were farmers and miners, good at growing food and digging holes, but not much else. They had no idea that every piece of farming equipment on Earth had been designed with a secondary purpose. The same machines that harvested wheat could manufacture weapons. The same factories that processed grain could build starships. In orbit around Earth, Captain Narration was making final preparations aboard her patrol ship. The Soul's Pride. To any casual observer, it was a typical human vessel, slow, bulky, and obviously designed for short-range patrols. The ship's hull was scratched and worn, giving it the appearance of a vessel that had seen better days. "Captain, we're receiving the final modification packages," reported her chief engineer, Commander Taewon Kim. "Should we begin installation?" "Not yet," Jang replied, looking at the tactical display. "Let them think we're just another outdated patrol ship. When the time comes, they'll get quite a surprise." The Soul's Pride was one of 50 ships that made up Earth's official space fleet. The Galactic Council had detailed records of every human vessel, their capabilities and their limitations. What the Council didn't know was that these ships were designed to be upgraded. In a matter of hours, the patrol vessel could become something entirely different. Meanwhile, in the research stations scattered across Earth's continents, Dr. Jin-A Moon was coordinating what the galaxy believed to be humanity's weather modification program. The project had been praised by several council species as an example of human environmental responsibility. "All satellite networks are synchronized," Moon reported to her team. "Weather monitoring stations across all 7 continents are online and ready." Her assistant, Dr. Woo-Jin Lee, pulled up a global map covered in thousands of green dots. "The atmospheric processors are functioning perfectly. When we activate the network, we'll have complete control over local weather patterns across the planet." Moon smiled. The galaxy saw humans as a species obsessed with controlling their environment. They thought the weather modification system was about preventing storms and ensuring good harvests. They had no idea it was actually a planetary defense grid that could create localized electromagnetic fields strong enough to disable approaching spacecraft. The betting pools across the galaxy were becoming more active by the hour. The odds heavily favored the Swarm Coalition, with most bookmakers offering 100-to-1 odds against human survival. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, wealthy merchants were already discussing how to divide up Earth's resources after the invasion. But there were a few voices of concern. Ambassador Yeltar of the Peaceful Alliance had tried to contact several council members about her worries. "Something doesn't feel right about this," she told her aide as they walked through the station's corridors. "I've worked with Ambassador Park for 5 years. He's too calm about this invasion. Either humans are incredibly brave or they know something we don't." Her aide shook his head. "The intelligence reports are clear. Humans have basic space travel and simple energy weapons. Against the Swarm Coalition's advanced technology, they don't stand a chance." Back on Earth, in the underground facility beneath the Australian outback, engineer Byung-seok Lim was making final checks on what appeared to be a mining operation. The surface showed typical human mining equipment: large excavators, processing plants, and storage facilities. Government reports listed it as a rare earth mineral extraction site. "Sir, the deep excavation systems are ready," reported his supervisor, Manager Kyung-soo Park. "All mining equipment has been converted to defensive positions. The orbital launch tubes are loaded and ready." Lim looked at the massive screen showing the underground complex. Tunnels stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. What looked like a simple mining operation was actually a vast network of weapon systems and manufacturing facilities. The mining equipment could be repositioned as orbital defense platforms within hours. The human deception was complete and brilliant. For 50 years, Earth had appeared to be exactly what the galaxy expected: a young species learning to use basic technology. Human ships were slow and simple. Human weapons were primitive. Human industry focused on agriculture and mining. But every single human facility served two purposes. Every farm could become a weapons factory. Every weather station was part of a defense network. Every mining operation hid military installations. The entire planet was one massive hidden fortress. Dr. So-Young Kim, the xenobiologist who worked as cultural attaché to the Galactic Council, was reviewing the final intelligence reports in her office aboard the Council station. For years, she had been Earth's eyes and ears in galactic politics. She had attended every military briefing, studied every species' weaknesses, and reported everything back to Earth's hidden command structure. "The Swarm Coalition is overconfident," she noted in her final report to Admiral Lee. "They're bringing their full fleet, but they're not expecting any real resistance. Their formation will be loose and their guard will be down. General Killmoth is known for his aggressive tactics but poor defensive planning." As the hours passed, more galactic species began offering help to humanity. The Crystalline Confederation sent refugee ships. The Aquatic Federation offered underwater colonies for human survivors. Even some of the smaller council members proposed memorial services for the brave but doomed human species. None of them realized that in 18 hours, they would witness something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The Swarm Coalition was about to learn why humans had spent 50 years studying galactic military tactics while pretending to be simple farmers and miners. The invasion fleet was already moving toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. They had no idea they were flying into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The Galactic Council station floated in the darkness between stars, a massive structure of metal and crystal that housed representatives from 847 different worlds. For 300 years, this station had been the center of galactic civilization, where species came together to discuss trade, resolve conflicts, and maintain the fragile peace that kept the galaxy functioning. Ambassador Hyunwoo Park walked through the curved corridors toward the main assembly hall, his simple black suit standing out among the elaborate robes and environmental suits worn by other delegates. After 5 years serving as Earth's representative, he still found the diversity of galactic life remarkable. Crystalline beings that communicated through light patterns passed by insect-like creatures that spoke in chemical signals, while aquatic species moved through water-filled tubes that ran alongside the regular walkways. Today's session was supposed to be routine. Budget discussions, trade route approvals, and minor territorial disputes between worlds that most people had never heard of. Park had prepared his notes on Earth's agricultural exports and mining quotas, The same simple topics that had defined humanity's role in galactic politics since they first made contact 50 years ago. Dr. So-Young Kim, Earth's cultural attaché and xenobiologist, fell into step beside him as they approached the assembly hall. She carried a tablet containing the latest reports from Earth's colonies, data that showed humanity's slow but steady expansion into nearby star systems. "Any word on why the Swarm Coalition requested emergency session time?" Kim asked quietly. Park shook his head. "Nothing official. General Killmoth's office just filed the paperwork yesterday. Could be anything from trade complaints to territorial issues." The assembly hall was already filling with delegates when they arrived. The vast chamber was designed to accommodate every form of life in the galaxy, with environmental controls that could adjust temperature, pressure, and atmospheric composition for different sections. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed the current speaker podium, surrounded by seating areas arranged in concentric circles. Councillor Vexitari, the reptilian speaker of the council, called the session to order with a series of clicks and hisses that the universal translators converted into standard galactic speech. His scales shifted color slightly as he spoke, a sign that he was maintaining strict neutrality. "The council recognizes the emergency petition from the Swarm Coalition," Vexitari announced. "General Killmoth, you have the floor." The insectoid general rose from his section, his 6 legs carrying him to the speaker's podium with mechanical precision. His translator converted his chemical signals into words, but even through the electronic voice, Park could hear an edge of aggression. "Honored council members," Killmoth began, "the Swarm Coalition brings urgent concerns about the rapid expansion of the human species. In the past 50 years, they have established colonies in 17 star systems, created trade networks that bypass traditional galactic routes, and shown a disturbing tendency toward independent action." Park felt Kim tense beside him, but he remained calm. These complaints weren't new. Several species had expressed concerns about human expansion, usually driven by fear of competition or jealousy over Earth's agricultural success. Furthermore, Killmoth continued, human behavior patterns suggest a species with aggressive tendencies that could threaten galactic stability. They expand rapidly, colonize worlds without proper council oversight, and maintain military forces that exceed recommended limits for their technology level. The chamber filled with murmurs as delegates discussed the accusations among themselves. Park noted which species seemed supportive of the coalition's position and which appeared skeptical. The Crystalline Confederation's representatives were flashing neutral white patterns, while the Aquatic Federation's delegates had turned a deep blue that indicated concern. "These concerns," Killmoth said, his voice rising slightly, "have convinced the Swarm Coalition and our allies that direct action is necessary. We formally declare our intention to invade and subjugate the human homeworld of Earth, along with all human colonies, for the safety and security of the galaxy." The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sound, light, and chemical signals. Park remained seated, his expression unchanged, while Kim gripped her tablet so hard her knuckles turned white. "Order! Order!" Vexitari shouted, his scales shifting to an angry orange color. "The council will maintain proper procedure." It took several minutes for the noise to die down. When it did, all eyes in the chamber turned to the human delegation. Park could feel the weight of their attention, the mixture of curiosity, pity, and in some cases, satisfaction from species that had never liked humanity's independent streak. "The council recognizes Ambassador Park," Vexitari announced. "You may respond to the coalition's declaration." Park stood slowly, gathering his thoughts. Around him, delegates leaned forward in their seats, expecting to see fear or desperation in the human representative. Instead, they saw only calm professionalism. "Thank you, Counselor," Park said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "The Swarm Coalition has made serious accusations against humanity. They claim we are aggressive and dangerous. They suggest that our expansion threatens galactic peace." He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. "I find it interesting that a coalition of species known for their own military conquest would make such accusations. But I will not argue the point. If the Swarm Coalition believes that force is necessary to resolve their concerns about humanity, then so be it." The chamber fell silent. Delegates who had expected protests or pleas for help instead heard something that sounded almost like acceptance. However, Park continued, I must invoke Article 7 of the Galactic Peace Accords. Any species facing invasion has the right to a preparation period of no less than 30 standard days. This allows for civilian evacuation, diplomatic resolution, or military preparation as the threatened species sees fit. General Killmoth's translator buzzed with what might have been laughter. You want 30 days to prepare? Ambassador, my forces number 10,000 ships with weapons that can destroy cities. Your entire fleet consists of perhaps 50 patrol vessels. What could you possibly accomplish in 30 days that would make any difference? Park smiled slightly, the first emotion he had shown since the session began. General, you would be surprised what humans can accomplish when properly motivated. We accept your declaration of war, and we request the full 30-day preparation period as guaranteed by galactic law. The Coalition's other representatives, species that had allied themselves with the Swarm for this action, began transmitting among themselves. Park caught fragments of their communications through his earpiece, expressions of amusement, confidence, and in some cases, bloodthirsty anticipation. Very well, Killmoth said. The Swarm Coalition agrees to honor the 30-day period. We will use this time to position our forces for maximum efficiency. When the 30 days end, we will demonstrate to the galaxy what happens to species that expand beyond their proper place. Counselor Vextari looked uncomfortable with the proceedings, but followed proper protocol. The Council acknowledges the declaration of war between the Swarm Coalition and humanity. The 30-day preparation period begins immediately. Are there any other matters requiring urgent attention? Several delegates tried to speak, offering mediation services or requesting permission to send humanitarian aid to Earth. Park politely declined all offers, stating that humanity would handle the situation according to their own customs. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Park remained in his seat for a few extra moments. Kim leaned over to whisper urgently in his ear. Sir, how are we going to evacuate 40 billion people in 30 days? Even if every ship in the galaxy helped, it would be impossible. Park's smile widened slightly. Dr. Kim, who said anything about evacuation? But sir, 10,000 ships. We don't have anything that can stand against a force that size, don't we? Park asked quietly. He pulled out his personal communicator, a simple device that looked primitive compared to the advanced technology used by other species. Prepare transmission to Earth Defense Command. Priority Alpha protocols. He typed a single line of text into the device. They're coming. You know what to do. The message was encrypted with codes that only a handful of people on Earth would recognize. Within minutes, it would reach Admiral Lee Dong-hyun in his command center beneath Seoul, Dr. Young-ho Choi in his agricultural research facility in Kansas, and dozens of other seemingly ordinary humans in apparently mundane jobs around the planet. As Park and Kim left the assembly hall, they passed groups of delegates already discussing the upcoming invasion. Most conversations involved expressions of sympathy for humanity and speculation about how quickly the war would end. Some species were already offering to help resettle human refugees after Earth fell. Ambassador, called a voice from behind them. They turned to see Ambassador Yeltar of the Peaceful Alliance approaching, her blue-skinned features showing genuine concern. I wanted to express my regrets about today's proceedings, she said. The space battle began with a sound that no one expected. Silence. In the vacuum between worlds, the most advanced military engagement in galactic history started without fanfare or dramatic music. Only the cold mathematics of physics and the deadly precision of weapons that had been designed for this exact moment. General Killmoth stared at his tactical displays as his fleet scattered in all directions. The neat formation that had conquered a dozen worlds was breaking apart under fire from weapons that shouldn't exist. Coalition ships tumbled through space, their hulls torn open by projectiles moving at impossible speeds. Damage report, he shouted over the chaos on his bridge. We've lost 47 ships in the first minute, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. The enemy weapons are unlike anything in our databases. They're firing solid projectiles at nearly light speed. From Earth's moon, the railgun batteries fired again. Each shot was a piece of dense metal accelerated through magnetic fields until it became a relativistic projectile. When these slugs hit coalition ships, they didn't just damage them. They passed completely through multiple vessels before finally slowing down. Captain Nari, Yang watched from the bridge of the Soul's Pride as her ship completed its transformation. The rusty patrol vessel was shedding its outer hull like a snake shedding skin. Beneath the disguise was something that made Coalition sensors scream warnings. Transformation complete, reported her chief engineer. All systems online. We're ready for combat operations. The Soul's Pride now looked nothing like the patrol ship that had been drifting near Jupiter an hour ago. Sleek armor plating covered advanced propulsion systems. Weapon ports opened to reveal energy cannons that hummed with barely contained power. Most shocking of all, the ship began moving with acceleration that should have turned its crew into paste. "How are they not dead?" demanded General Killmoth as he watched human ships perform maneuvers that violated everything the galaxy knew about biology. "Those acceleration levels should kill any organic crew." His science officer checked and rechecked his readings. "Unknown, General. Either humans can survive forces that would kill us, or their ships have some kind of artificial gravity system we've never seen before." The truth was both simpler and more complex than the Coalition could imagine. Humans had indeed developed artificial gravity technology, but they had also trained their crews to handle extreme conditions. Every human pilot had spent years preparing for combat situations that other species considered impossible. Pilot Hai Wan Yun led her fighter squadron in a dance of death around Coalition heavy cruisers. Her small ship moved like it was ignoring the laws of physics, spinning and diving through space in patterns that made enemy targeting systems give up in confusion. "Blue Squadron, target their weapon systems," she called over the communications channel. "Remember, we want prisoners, not wreckage." Her fighters opened fire with weapons that looked like simple laser cannons, but cut through Coalition armor like it was made of paper. The beams weren't just coherent light. They were streams of exotic particles that destabilized the molecular bonds in enemy ship hulls. On Earth's surface, Dr. Yunji Lee stood in what appeared to be a weather monitoring station in the mountains of Tibet. The facility looked exactly like thousands of others around the planet, a collection of sensors, computers and communication equipment designed to track atmospheric conditions. "Weather modification system online," she reported to her team. "All atmospheric processors are synchronized and ready." Through the station's windows, the sky began to change. Clouds formed in perfect geometric patterns, spiraling around points that had nothing to do with natural weather. The atmosphere itself was being turned into a weapon. "Initiating gravity wave generation," Lee announced. High above the planet, space began to ripple. The Coalition fleet found themselves caught in gravitational anomalies that made their ships move in directions their engines weren't pushing them. Vessels that tried to escape Earth's gravity well discovered that the planet was somehow making itself heavier. "This is impossible," General Killmoth screamed at his science officer. "Planets don't just change their gravitational fields." "The humans appear to have weaponized their weather control system," the officer replied, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're using the planet's atmosphere to create localized space-time distortions, Captain." To Hyun Shin commanded what the Coalition had assumed was humanity's flagship. A large but obviously outdated vessel that looked like it had been built by people who barely understood space travel. The ship's hull was covered in simple metal plating, and its weapons appeared to be basic missile launchers. "Sir, enemy fleet is attempting to regroup around their command ship," reported his tactical officer. "Should we reveal our true capabilities?" Shin smiled. "I think it's time they learned what human engineering can really do." The flagship began to change. What had looked like simple hull plating fell away to reveal surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. The basic missile launchers transformed into weapon systems that glowed with internal energy. Most shocking of all, the ship suddenly became translucent. "Cloaking technology activated," Shin announced. "Begin hit-and-run attacks." The human flagship vanished from Coalition sensors, then reappeared behind their formation. It fired a single shot that passed through the shields of 3 enemy ships as if they weren't there. Then it disappeared again, only to emerge somewhere else entirely. "How are they doing that?" Killmoth demanded. "Our sensors can't track them." "Their ship appears to be phasing in and out of normal space," his science officer replied. "It's like they found a way to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Back on Earth, General Mi Young-woo was coordinating the planet's surface defenses from a bunker that was supposedly a civilian emergency shelter. The facility looked like a simple underground refuge designed to protect people from natural disasters. "Sir, Coalition dropships are attempting to land in Sector 7, reported her aide. Should we activate the surface batteries? Wu checked her tactical display. A dozen Coalition landing craft were descending toward what appeared to be a defenseless farming community. The enemy had decided that if they couldn't win the space battle quickly, they would take hostages on the planet's surface. Activate the farms, she ordered. In the peaceful valley below, something impossible happened. The wheat fields began to move. What had looked like normal agricultural land revealed itself to be camouflaged defensive positions. Grain silos opened like flowers to reveal anti-aircraft weapons. Barns unfolded into vehicle depots. Even the farmhouses transformed into command bunkers. The Coalition landing craft found themselves flying into a defensive network that rivaled the best military installations in the galaxy. Weapons that had been disguised as farm equipment opened fire with devastating accuracy. Every shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy, but the message was clear. There was nowhere on Earth that wasn't defended. The entire planet is a fortress, whispered Killmoth's tactical officer as he watched the surface battle. Every civilian facility has military capabilities. How long have they been preparing for this? The answer was 50 years, but the Coalition couldn't know that. They couldn't understand that every human colony, every mining operation, every weather station had been designed with dual purposes. Humanity hadn't just hidden their technology. They had hidden their entire strategic philosophy. As the battle continued, more Coalition ships began sending surrender signals. Their crews had realized they weren't fighting a primitive species that had gotten lucky with a few advanced weapons. They were fighting a civilization that had surpassed galactic technology, while pretending to be farmers and miners. General, we've lost over half our fleet, reported Killmoth's second-in-command. The humans are systematically disabling our ships without destroying them. They're not trying to kill us. They're capturing our entire invasion force. Killmoth looked at the tactical display showing the remains of his once mighty fleet. Human ships moved between the disabled Coalition vessels like shepherds herding sheep. Enemy Marines were boarding his ships, but they were providing medical aid to wounded Coalition soldiers rather than executing prisoners. Open a channel to the human. Commander, he ordered quietly. Admiral Taemin Kang's face appeared on the view screen. He looked calm and professional, not like someone who had just won the most one-sided battle in galactic history. General Killmoth, Kang said politely, are you ready to discuss surrender terms? Killmoth stared at the human admiral, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. How long have you been planning this? Since the day we first made contact with galactic civilization, Kang replied. We studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. We designed our entire defense strategy around what we learned. Why didn't you reveal your true capabilities to the Council? Kang's expression didn't change. Because the galaxy needed to believe we were harmless. There are species out there much more dangerous than your Coalition, General. While you were planning to invade us, we were protecting smaller worlds from threats they never even knew existed. The Swarm Coalition fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 10,000 ships spread across space in a formation that had conquered dozens of worlds. General Killmoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. Target acquired, reported his navigation officer. One small yellow star with 9 planets. The third planet shows heavy population centers and primitive industrial activity. Killmoth's insect-like features showed amusement. Through the view screen, Earth looked exactly as their intelligence reports had described. A blue and green world with obvious cities, clear atmospheric patterns, and simple orbital installations. The perfect target for a quick demonstration of Swarm Coalition power. What about their defensive fleet? Killmoth asked. Scanning now, General. We detect approximately 50 human vessels in the outer system. They appear to be old patrol ships and cargo haulers. No significant weapon signatures. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the live broadcasts from long-range sensor networks. The images showed the massive Swarm Coalition fleet facing what looked like a handful of outdated human ships. Betting pools closed as the odds became too one-sided to be interesting. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Yeltar watched the screens with growing worry. Where are the human evacuation ships? She asked her aide. They should be fleeing the planet by now. Her aide checked his reports. No evacuation detected. In fact, human orbital traffic appears to be normal. Supply ships, weather satellites, mining platforms, all operating on regular schedules. Admiral Taemin Kang stood in the command center of what appeared to be a simple cargo vessel floating near Jupiter. The ship's exterior was covered in rust and repair patches, looking like it had been hauling supplies between planets for decades. But inside, the most advanced command systems in human space tracked every movement of the approaching fleet. "Sir, the enemy fleet is maintaining formation as predicted," reported Commander Hae-won-yoon from her fighter squadron. "They're treating this like a training exercise." Kang nodded. The Swarm Coalition was making their first mistake. They saw the human ships and assumed they understood the threat level. They had no idea that what they were looking at was carefully designed theater. "All stations prepare for Phase 1, Kang broadcast on encrypted channels. "Remember, we want them to fire first. Let them think they're winning." On Earth, engineer Beom-seok Lim watched his screens from deep underground. The planet's surface showed normal activity. Cities functioning, traffic moving, people going about their daily lives. But beneath the surface, every defense system was ready and waiting. "Sir, incoming transmission from the enemy fleet," his communications officer reported. The message was broadcast on all frequencies meant to be heard across the galaxy. General Kilmoth's voice filled the command center, speaking in the standard galactic language. "Attention, human vessels. You have 30 minutes to surrender your planet to Swarm Coalition control. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against our advanced technology." Lim smiled at the arrogance in the general's voice. The Swarm Coalition had studied human technology for months, analyzed every ship and weapon system in the official records. They thought they knew exactly what humanity was capable of. "Should we respond, sir?" asked his communications officer. "Not yet. Let them make the first move." The Coalition fleet began moving into attack formation. Their ships were sleek and deadly, armed with energy weapons that could destroy cities and shields that had never been penetrated by galactic standard weapons. They approached the human patrol ships with the confidence of predators closing in on helpless prey. Captain Nari. Zhang watched from the bridge of the Soul's Pride as enemy ships surrounded her small patrol group. Her vessel looked pathetic compared to the massive Coalition warships, a simple metal hull with basic engines and obvious weapon ports. "Captain, they're targeting us with scanning beams," reported her weapons officer. "They're trying to analyze our defensive capabilities." "Let them scan," Zhang replied calmly. "They'll see exactly what we want them to see." The scans showed what Coalition intelligence expected: simple chemical missiles, basic energy shields, and hull plating that would barely stop a meteorite. The human ship appeared to be armed with weapons that were hundreds of years behind galactic standards. General Kilmoth reviewed the scan results with satisfaction. "As expected, their most advanced ship is barely equivalent to our training vessels. Communications, open a channel to the Galactic Council. Let them watch as we demonstrate what happens to species that expand beyond their capabilities." The live broadcast began, watched by trillions of beings across the galaxy. The massive Coalition fleet surrounded the tiny human force like sharks circling wounded fish. News commentators began describing what they expected to be a very short battle. "Begin with a demonstration," Kilmoth ordered. "Target that supply depot near their fourth planet. One shot should be enough to show them our power." A Coalition destroyer moved toward what appeared to be a simple human supply station orbiting Mars. The structure looked like a basic metal framework with cargo containers and docking ports. Long-range scans showed it contained food supplies, mining equipment, and other civilian materials. "Firing main cannon," the destroyer captain reported. The energy beam lanced out across space, designed to completely vaporize the supply depot. It was meant to be a warning shot that would convince the humans to surrender immediately. The beam struck the depot dead center. For a moment it seemed like the weapon had worked perfectly. Then something impossible happened. The explosion was not the simple destruction of a supply depot. Instead, it was a blast that lit up the entire inner solar system. The energy release was equivalent to a small star going supernova, creating a shockwave that damaged several Coalition ships that had been watching from what they thought was a safe distance. "What just happened?" Kilmoth demanded, staring at the tactical displays in shock. "Unknown, General. The depot appears to have been some kind of antimatter storage facility." "But that's impossible. Our intelligence reports showed no antimatter technology in human space. Across the galaxy, The live broadcast showed something that made no sense. A primitive human supply depot had just exploded with enough force to destroy a small moon. Coalition ships were tumbling through space, their hulls damaged by an explosion that should have been impossible. On Earth, Commander Sujin Bei smiled as she watched the enemy fleet's confusion. The supply depot had indeed been an antimatter facility, but not for storage. It was a manufacturing plant that had been producing antimatter weapons for 20 years, disguised as a simple cargo station. Phase 1 complete, she reported to Admiral Kang. Enemy fleet is surprised and disorganized. They're trying to regroup. Initiate Phase 2, Kang replied. Show them what else they missed. Across the solar system, things that had looked like asteroids began to move. Space rocks that had been drifting in predictable orbits for decades suddenly showed signs of life. Engine signatures appeared on coalition sensors as dozens of asteroids began changing course. General, we have a problem, reported Killmoth's tactical officer. Those asteroids are moving under their own power. They're not natural objects. Impossible. Our deep space surveys showed normal asteroid patterns throughout this system. But the evidence was undeniable. What the coalition had thought were space rocks were actually camouflaged defense platforms. Each asteroid began unfolding like a metallic flower, revealing weapon systems and shield generators that were clearly not primitive technology. On the surface of Earth's moon, engineer Jong Soo-yoon watched his displays as the lunar surface began to open. For 50 years, humans had been mining the moon for rare materials. The galaxy had detailed records of every excavation site and mineral extraction facility. What they didn't know was that the mining operations had hollowed out huge sections of the moon's interior. The excavated areas had been filled with the largest weapons ever built by human technology. Lunar defense grid coming online, Yoon reported, all batteries charged and ready to fire. The moon's surface split open in a dozen places, revealing massive railgun installations that had been hidden beneath fake mining equipment. Each weapon was large enough to accelerate projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. General Killmoth watched his tactical displays with growing horror. The primitive human system was transforming before his eyes. Asteroids became battle stations. Mining platforms revealed weapon systems. The moon itself was apparently one giant fortress. All ships defensive positions, he ordered. We're dealing with unknown technology. Prepare for immediate withdrawal if necessary. But it was already too late. The trap had been sprung, and the Swarm Coalition fleet was positioned exactly where humanity wanted them. Admiral Kang opened communications on all frequencies, his voice calm and confident. General Killmoth, this is Admiral Taemin Kang of the Earth Defense Force. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when threatened. Class is now in session. 6 hours after the first shot was fired, the Sol system was quiet again. The massive Swarm Coalition invasion fleet now drifted in space, their weapons disabled and their crews in human custody. Medical ships moved between the captured vessels, providing aid to wounded Coalition soldiers, while engineers worked to repair the damage from the brief but decisive battle. General Killmoth sat in the conference room of Admiral Taemin Kang's flagship, no longer the proud commander of a conquering army, but a prisoner of war facing the reality of his complete defeat. Around the table sat other coalition commanders, all looking stunned by how quickly their supposedly overwhelming force had been neutralized. Your casualties were minimal, Admiral Kang said as he reviewed the battle reports. 43 dead, 218 wounded out of a fleet of nearly 3 million beings. My medical teams are treating your injured as we speak. Killmoth stared at the numbers. In 6 hours, humanity had captured the largest invasion force in galactic history, while barely harming the crews. Why didn't you kill us? By galactic law, you had the right to destroy any invading force. Kang set down his tablet and looked directly at the coalition general. Because this was never about revenge or conquest, General. This was about sending a message to the galaxy. We wanted everyone to understand what happens when you threaten Earth, but we also wanted them to see how we handle that threat. On the Galactic Council station, emergency sessions had been running for hours. Representatives from hundreds of species watched live feeds from the Sol system, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. The betting pools that had confidently predicted human defeat were now scrambling to pay out impossible odds to the few beings who had bet on Earth. Ambassador Hyun-woo Park stood before the council assembly, no longer the representative of a primitive species, but the voice of what was clearly the galaxy's most advanced military power. Behind him, holographic displays showed the captured coalition fleet and the human technology that had made the victory possible. "Honored council members," Park began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "For 50 years, humanity has been a member of this council under false pretenses. We allowed you to believe we were a young species learning to use basic technology. Today I must tell you the truth." Councillor Vexistari, the reptilian speaker of the council, leaned forward in his seat. "Ambassador Park, are you saying that humanity has been deliberately deceiving this council for half a century?" "Yes," Park replied without hesitation, "but not for the reasons you might think. We didn't hide our capabilities to gain advantage over other species. We hid them to protect the galaxy from threats that most of you never knew existed." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Species representatives began talking among themselves, trying to understand what the human ambassador meant. Park waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "In the past 50 years, while you believed we were struggling with basic space travel, humanity has secretly prevented 47 military conflicts, stopped 12 attempted genocides, and destroyed 6 different aggressive species that plan to conquer large portions of the galaxy." Dr. Chan-woo Kim, standing beside Park, activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared in various systems, each one representing a conflict that had been stopped before it could begin. "The Razor fleet that disappeared 20 years ago," Kim explained, pointing to one of the red dots. "They were planning to harvest the neural tissue of the Peaceful Alliance's children. We intercepted and destroyed their entire armada. The plague that mysteriously ended on Cathari Prime," Kim pointed to another dot. "It wasn't a natural mutation that stopped the disease. Human medical teams created the cure and distributed it through your own relief efforts. The asteroid that changed course to avoid hitting the crystalline homeworld," another dot appeared. "We diverted it using gravity manipulators that we later disguised as natural gravitational anomalies." The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. For 50 years, while believing they were protecting a primitive human species, the galaxy had actually been protected by that same species. President Ji-hai Choi appeared on the main view screen, broadcasting from Earth's capital. She looked calm and professional, addressing not just the council but the entire galaxy that was watching these revelations unfold. "My fellow beings," she began, "humanity did not reveal our true nature because we wanted to rule over you. We revealed it because the time for secrets has passed. The galaxy faces threats that require unity and cooperation, not the conflicts that have divided us for so long." On the bridge of his captured flagship, General Killmoth was watching the same broadcast. "You could have ruled the galaxy," he said to Admiral Kang. "With this technology, no force could have stopped you." Kang shook his head. "General, ruling the galaxy was never our goal. Protecting it was. The same aggressive instincts that drove your coalition to invade Earth are what we've been fighting against across the galaxy for decades. But why? Why protect species that would have turned against you if they knew your true power? Because that's what civilization means," Kang replied. "Using power to protect rather than conquer. Using strength to defend rather than attack. We learned long ago that the greatest victory is the one that prevents a war from starting." Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Park was explaining humanity's true role in galactic affairs. "Every human colony you thought was struggling to survive was actually a military outpost protecting nearby systems. Every human trading ship was carrying sensors that monitored aggressive species. Every human diplomat was gathering intelligence on potential threats." Councillor Yeltar of the Peaceful Alliance stood up, her voice shaking with emotion. "You've been protecting us all this time and we never knew. How many of my people are alive today because of human intervention?" Dr. Kim checked his records. "The Peaceful Alliance has been targeted for conquest or destruction 14 times in the past 50 years. Each time, human forces eliminated the threat before it could reach your space." The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Species that had pitied humanity for their apparent primitiveness were learning that they owed their very existence to human protection. Admiral Su Min. Han stood on the deck of one of the coalition's captured dreadnoughts, overseeing the transfer of prisoners to more comfortable accommodations. The coalition soldiers looked confused and frightened, unsure of what would happen to them now that their invasion had failed so completely. "Sir," one of her officers reported, "the coalition crews are asking about their treatment. They expected to be executed or enslaved." Han smiled. "Tell them they'll be treated according to galactic law and human standards. Medical care, proper food, communication with their families. When this is over, they'll be returned to their homeworlds with a complete record of what happened here." "Should we also tell them about the rehabilitation programs?" "Not yet. Let them see how we treat prisoners first. Some of them might volunteer for the programs once they understand what humanity really represents." The rehabilitation programs were another human innovation that the galaxy was about to learn about. Rather than simply punishing aggressive species, humanity had developed methods to help them understand the benefits of cooperation over conquest. Dr. Yunji Lee stood in her weather control center, now revealed to be one of thousands of similar facilities across human space. "All atmospheric processors are returning to normal operation," she reported. "The gravitational anomalies are dissipating, and local spacetime is stabilizing." Through her windows, the sky was returning to normal blue. The weapon systems were powering down, and the planet was resuming its disguise as a peaceful agricultural world. But now the galaxy knew the truth about what lay beneath Earth's surface. President Choi continued her address to the galaxy. "Humanity proposes a new structure for the Galactic Council, not one based on the strongest ruling over the weakest, but one where every species contributes their unique strengths to our common defense. We will share some of our defensive technologies with Council species who commit to peaceful development. We will continue to protect smaller worlds from aggressive neighbors, and we will work together to build a galaxy where disputes are resolved through negotiation rather than warfare." The response from across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of species requested immediate alliance with humanity. Others asked for protection from neighbors they had never dared to oppose before. The entire balance of galactic power had shifted in a single day. But the most important response came from General Killmoth himself. "Admiral Kang," he said quietly, "the Swarm Coalition formally requests to join your rehabilitation program. We need to learn a better way." Kang nodded. "General, the first lesson is simple. True strength isn't about the power to destroy your enemies. It's about the wisdom to turn your enemies into friends." Ambassador Park concluded his address to the Council with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We just wanted to make sure no one else could rule it through force. The question now is, what kind of galaxy do we want to build together?" The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun.